Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Jan Erickson from Stepping Aside, and welcome to Somewhat Daily Tarot and Rune for the 14th day of August, 2019. Well, no jury duty today, none yesterday, so although they did have people scheduled to come in, he just wasn't one of them, so my husband's out fulfilling his watering duties as we speak. So one less day we have to worry about trying to figure out how we're going to get things done around here while he has jury duty for the next 2 weeks. Well, I went and I checked the astrological chart. Since I've changed up how I'm doing things, I feel like I could maybe focus a little more on just some astrological stuff, each day or whenever I feel like I have time to do it or what have you, since I seem to like that sort of stuff. So I just wanted to share with you today while I shuffle here and get ready to go. Usually I chat a little bit, but I just wanted to share with you. There's a yod. There's a thing in astrology called aspect patterns, and there's a lot of different ones. There's T squares and the Star of David. There's all kinds of different ones. The Grand Trines, all kinds of different ones. Rosetta, Mystic Rectangle is cool. But the yods are, and there's different kinds, but the basic yod is also, I believe, known as the finger of fate or a finger of God or something. And it's this skewed triangle where you have two planets that form the base of it that are in sextile to one another. And then the other ones are called quincunx or in conjunct with there's a third planet, the focal planet, that they don't really understand. But the other two, the two in sextile with one another that like each other, are happy with one another, that are in harmony with one another, they basically provide the basis and the foundation for the one out front to do what it needs to do, right? Well, today there's a yod between the moon, the Jupiter, and the north node. Now, the north node deals with, we've talked about this of late because I keep creating either Caput or Cata Draconis with my geomancy runes at the end of the reading. So anyway, this one is the north node. So we've been talking about that. And from those discussions that we are dealing with issues of the present life and also, the future, what it has to hold, what our challenges are. And then anything to do with the south node has to do with past life influences, basically. So, or you could just look at it in terms of, well, this is the past and this is the present and future with the north node, right? So right now then we have the north node of the moon is essentially the focal point of this yod. And the meaning behind that, where it's at today, it suggests that there's an optimistic, basically how I'm interpreting this yod between these three planets, Jupiter, the moon, and then the north node, is that we possess the ability to have an optimistic approach to things. We take an optimistic approach to things, and we tend to learn from our experiences. The north node, where it's at right now, sort of signals that maybe we struggle a little bit, in life, learning things, but when we learn them, they tend to inform our way forward. And so, in other words, we learn from our mistakes. And so, with Jupiter being an expansive energy and the moon being emotional, you're basically talking about optimism and the willingness to learn from one's mistakes. And so, that energy is very present today. So try to allow that to manifest through what you do and see if you don't have an easier time, understanding if things are going wrong. It's like, oh, okay, let me get the broader message. Anyway, another couple things I wanted to mention in the chart, Saturn's in Capricorn, so that might portend some rigid thinking, which doesn't actually allow the yod to work in your favor. So you might think about that too if you're feeling a little pulled in another direction, not being so willing to be optimistic. Just realize that's probably Saturn in Capricorn at work, is sort of dragging you back a little bit. So don't let that happen. And then another couple things that I noticed that are probably relate to one another. Black Moon Lilith, I include that in the chart. And it's in Pisces right now, which, God, I want to say mine is too in my natal chart. I don't know. But anyway, it's suggesting difficulty with emotional, or is it? I'll have to look. With emotional expression and also perception. Sometimes it's easy. Well, let me tell you about Chiron and Aries. That's also suggesting that the perception or the reality of a personal violation has occurred in our lives. Someone has violated us on a personal level, emotionally, and we feel wounded. Chiron is the wounded healer, and so Chiron asks us to take a look at who we are and how we perceive things through the woundings of our lives. Most of that stuff, sure, bad things can happen, but how wounded we are from them is our choice. And I know that's tough to process and to contemplate, because sometimes, the world just feels like it's just too much and it just hurts too much and it's not our fault. And even when it isn't our fault, we didn't, in other words, we didn't contribute to the situation. We're just sitting there and it happens, because let's face it, sometimes people, they're mean and they hurt you. It just happens, and you haven't done anything to participate. In other words, you haven't been part of the escalation process. You're just sitting there and you get hurt. You're innocent in the whole thing. Those are the kinds of wounds I'm talking about. They seem to impact us so dramatically. And I just think that at that point, we have to decide how much of it are we going to remain. In other words, how much of our focus is going to remain in the past on those moments, and how much will then that perception regarding it inform our future, right? But with Black Moon Lilith and in Pisces and Chiron and Aries, and then you've got Saturn in Capricorn, it's going to be a lot of things challenging that yacht at work today. So try to just acknowledge and embrace whatever emotions that come up. If they're difficult, if they're based on past woundings, see them for what they are, find the message within it, and then move on. That's the whole point of the yod, is to not allow resistance. And resistance is when you're focusing on something that's no longer happening and you're becoming upset about it. You're staying in the past. You're not even in the present moment. You might say, oh, but I'm thinking it in the present moment. Yeah, your focus is on the past. And so if you can move out of that, because that's the area of resistance in our lives, if we can move out of that resistance and into allowing and allow ourselves to remain in the present moment, then we're able then to process those difficult emotions a little easier. So anyhow, something to think about. Well, let's get started. We're about the same time I usually am. I usually chat a bit. And this time I just thought, well, instead of griping about who in the Oval Office, let's just talk about some astrology, and that'd be better. So anyhow, let's take our first card. If this is your first time here, welcome. Thank you so much for coming by. Click subscribe. I'd love you to do that. And if you've come back, thank you, thank you. It's so nice to see everybody. And of course, we're going to begin with a court card, my least favorite aspect of tarot. Although I'm warming up to them. I mean, they have their place, clearly, but I don't know. We could have done without them, maybe. But here you have the Page of Swords. So you're talking about a youthful person. So in some decks, they're the princess. In some decks, they're the daughter, in the more non-traditional ones. But here we see a lot of clouds. He's standing sort of up on I don't know, it's not really a precipice, but it's sort of a little hill. So he's standing above everything. But you're showing some movement. So there's a message. Looks like some wind there in his hair. It's a message about the future because the sword is not angled straight up and down from spirit. It's not angled to the past. It's angled to the future. So this is a new message, new thinking, new reason. Swords is about the intellect. And so this is about some mental process. So again, communication. It can have to do with legal issues. Swords is really about, about balance and fairness and liberty and justice, as well as our intellect. But, all of that is all about our intellect, isn't it? It's where all of that comes from. It comes from the mind, doesn't it? And the choices that we make. Well, here with the Page of Swords, we're looking at some information that may be coming to us for the future, having to do with something that's coming. Sometimes it can indicate a pregnancy or the birth of a child. Swords could be about directions, so new direction. But let's take another card and see if we can get some more information on what this is. I take the 13th card each time for randomness sake. So I was born on the 13th and used to wake up at 3:13 every morning. That's the other thing. I forgot to put that in the comments, or maybe I did. Maybe I did put it in the comment section. I always put stuff on show more underneath these videos, and then there's also the comments, and sometimes I'll put stuff in there. What I forgot to do when I was looking over the video before I posted it, I noticed that I had a 7 energy yesterday as well, and we were already talking. Let's see what it was. We had the Queen of Cups, the Ace of Wands, the Lovers, Isa and Kata Draconis. We were talking about the end of patriarchy, basically, and bringing us back with the Lovers. We were talking about balanced polarity. Well, and then, see, I forgot to even notice until after it was all said and done that we had a 7 energy, again, about balance. And because the 7 really, in my view, is sort of the numerological depiction of the scales, where you've got 3 and 3 and 1, that's 7. So that was about balance, and that's was actually the running theme of the whole thing, and I totally didn't say it, but I did put it in the comments. So check there always to see if there's something I figured out after I was done that I forgot to say. I get caught up, I don't. It goes through my head and goes right on out, and then I don't remember to say it. So anyway, well, we have another court card, the King of Pentacles, and as you know from yesterday, if you were here, not a fan of the kings. He's surrounded by all of his stuff. You've got grapes, you've got oak leaves, you've got the castle and the kingdom in the background. Everything is ornate. You see the ram's heads on his throne there, depicting his power and authority and control. If the court cards were numbered, which they're not, the page would be an 11. So that's illumination. That's the master number for illumination, isn't it? So again, a message. But the king would be a 14, and that would reduce to 5, which aligns with today. Today's the 14th. And so you're looking at change with the king. Although he seems pretty sedentary, doesn't he? He seems very, very caught up in his own thing. The King of Pentacles is likely the most generous of all the kings, but he's still a king, and so it's all going to be about him. So either we have a message about an authority figure, a male authority figure in our lives, or a male authority figure is going to give us a message of some kind. We can look at it that way, but we still don't know yet, do we? We're going to take another card here, and we might play around with the order, because it kind of feels like if we get another court card, I'm not really sure here. We'll have to take a 4th card, or the rune may have to bring this all together, or both of them may have to. This is the downfall of court cards. See, because the king's not even looking at the page. The page is looking toward the past in a way there, and the king is just not even looking at the future. He's just kind of looking down and maybe toward the future, but he's really more concerned about his own existence, I think, than anyone else's. He's not looking any of us in the eye. That's another thing I don't like about the kings, because they don't look you in the eye. So that tells you that they're up to something. Oh, come on, I'm right. I'm right. Let's do another card. the Knight of Cups. So we have to do a fourth one to see if we get the whole family here. But here we've got a knight who's going into the future, though, isn't he? This could be the sun in other decks. It could be the prince. But he's going off on his quest. Here, he's got the grail in his hand, doesn't he? He's got the chalice. He's the knight. He's the Templar knight. He's the one on the Holy Grail quest. You see the river out in front. His steed is about to, he's not in battle, obviously, because his visor is up. He's offering graciousness. He's offering love. He's offering compassion as he goes on his quest. His horse is white, a symbol of purity. I'm going to do a fourth card because I literally have no idea what this is going on here. So we've got the earth element, we've got the water element, and we've got the air element. Let's see if we can get fire. But here we have an authority figure in the middle who's just sort of sitting there while his page and his knight they're doing all the work, aren't they? Let's do one more. See if we can make this a significator of the reading. The Page of Cups. Well, this is fascinating. I'm going to add some numbers into this. So we've got two 11s on each end. We've got two pages on each end. Again, both pages are looking toward the past. We've got one that's holding a chalice with a fish coming out. A card of emotional presence for the Page of Cups. You see the water behind. If you've ever seen a biorhythm chart, you'll know that they're like little sine waves, and it'll cover things like intuition, physical, intellect, spirituality, all of that, depending on how many things you want to include in it. And it looks like this. It's just a series of lines that do this. And you can see basically if you're feeling down or something, it could just simply be energetically you are. And then we learn to associate mood with the energy. And unfortunately, we shouldn't do that. There are times when I'm just flat out sad. If I check my biorhythm chart, the emotions are like in the negatives. It's like, oh, so energetically, that's affecting me. And so then my mood is one of sadness, right? When it's just the energy. And if you sit and you wait, because the wave's going to come back up, right? Pretty soon you don't feel that way anymore, and nothing happened, right, to make that happen. Well, that's energy and how it affects us. It's how our energetic vibration does this. It's just how it goes. It couldn't if it, it has to do that, right? It's just what we do. It's just reality. So there are times you're going to be up, times you're going to be down, right? It just happens. If we could learn to just check in with that first before we jump to conclusions and think something actually happened to make us this way, and then realize that it wasn't anything like that, that it's simply the natural flow that's happening, the natural energetic flow that we experience every single day, I think we would do better. But that's what you've got. You've got two pages. Let me turn that one around. So new message, new emotions, a new way, a new perspective. I like the idea of having something terminate, so I'm going to leave both pages on each end. That's the way it came out, so we're just going to leave it that way. And then on the inside here, then we have a Knight of Cups. So right now we have a predominance of emotions. So we're just going to look at this from an elemental standpoint. We've got the preponderance of emotions with the Knight of Cups and the Page of Cups, so we've got movement that way. An offering, if you will. So that would indicate a new direction or a new perception, perhaps. The Page of Swords suggests that. Away from perhaps indifference maybe what this is, because this is the court, there's a certain level of authority here. And so it could be authority or it could be the individuals involved, but I don't think this is about a man and three younger guys. I don't think that it is. I think this is about the energy behind all of it. And I think that we start with maybe some new perception that's needed. In fact, if we wanted to put the king first, we could have that be the catalyst for it, have the king be the catalyst, and then we have the page of swords next, where we make a new decision about it. And the decision we make is to be more emotionally available to people, perhaps. The thing I don't like about the kings is that they're all about themselves. So when one comes up and you start to see something new on the horizon, both with pages and or even aces, aces would be another one. If we saw maybe some twos here, then that would suggest a different type of balance for this king or this person in authority. But each one of us is an authority, even if we're not in authority over someone else. We're the sovereign. We have sovereignty in our lives, right? So we're the authority over our lives, and sometimes we don't assert that, right? Or if we do, maybe we do it in a way that's off-putting, or conflict-oriented or something, So we don't do it in a way that makes other people feel comfortable. And so what having two court cards having to do with cups is telling us we need a different approach. We need a different reaction, maybe. We need a different response. We need a different presentation, one that's based on compassion, maybe allowing intuition to flow into the situation a little more. We have Fehu, which is the first rune of the Elder Futhark. It's the sending rune in magic. You would use it that way. You could use it, you could simply chant or express Fehu when you want to do something, and that would send your intention. Runes can be used in rune magic. It's one of the things I do. I do both rune and herb magic when I typically do things. I also do knot magic, cord magic. But basically, oh good Lord, what is all over my finger? I don't even know. Well, it's coming off, so whatever it is. I haven't been outside. I don't know what happened. I was cleaning up. Maybe that's what it was. So I got something on my hand. Anyway, Fehu, again, is about the oryx, cattle. It's about movable wealth. Being the first rune of the Elder Futhark, though, and the sending rune, it's about expression of energy outward. When people started keeping cattle back in the day, suddenly you had wealth that was movable. You could move your herd around to different pastures. You could move your herd around to different locations if you wanted to move the tribe, the whatever, your home, whatever, your family, or it was typically a tribe. The tribe would maybe want to move. Well, you could move your wealth with you. You no longer had to stay in one place. And so so then basically what we're talking about is currency or possessions. And basically what this is doing is that we're manifesting productive energy with it, though. One thing I wanted to find, though, achieve success, yes. Circulates life force. But it attracts wealth and protects valuables. Now, what is a valuable in this case? If this is about interaction and how we relate to other people, how we perceive other people, then that is the valuable, isn't it? That we're trying to protect. And with Fehu, this is basically saying, you know what, we have to step outside whatever indifference that we're either experiencing or offering. We have to step outside that comfort zone and manifest something different. Fehu is about manifesting productive energy. And so consequently, if we are remaining aloof and indifferent in our lives to other people, we're not manifesting properly. Part of our experience here is to be able to learn to live with other people, not just, acquire possessions or acquire what our home or whatever, right? We have to get along with other people. And how we do that matters. If we're constantly indifferent, like the king here, it's not going to happen, right? So we need a new way of thinking. And the new way of thinking is about being emotionally available to others. Now let's see what the geomancy rune has to say here. We're going to put this in the order of air, of fire, air, water, and earth. So we've got a single dot for fire and air. Oh, so we have Fortuna Minor. All right, I will draw that out for you. Okay, so on the geomancy runes, if you've not been here before and you've not seen this done before, this is just the way I do it. I have 4 runes that I've crafted. They're made from hawthorn, and they have 2 dots on one side indicating a passive influence, and 1 dot on the other side indicating an active influence. So projective, receptive. Okay, and on the single dot side, I have indicated which element it's assigned to, and so we put these in the order of air, or rather of fire, air, water, and earth, and we end up with a rune that looks like this. In this case, it's Fortuna Minor. We have one that's Fortuna Major, which is greater wealth, and then this one is Fortuna Minor, which is wealth that is a little more transient. It's there, but it's fleeting. And that's the thing about emotions. If we don't take care of how we present ourselves to people, if we're always freaking out about this and that, there is Fortuna Minor. You can see fire is an active influence, air is an active influence, but water and earth are passive. So there's some intention being expressed there. But in terms of our mundane aspects of life, our foundation, all of that, that's a passive influence. We're going along with others. So that indicates a tribal type of experience, which aligns well with Fehu and the whole reason for that. Emotions are somewhat passive. So in terms of gaining fortune or having success, we're not quite as motivated as we might be. We're a little more passive in all of that, maybe a little more allowing. And I think that that's probably aligning with the King of Pentacles. Wealth, but not too motivated. He's just not real motivated. Or the motivation, I guess, only goes so far, maybe. And I guess that's the point. Sometimes we get too comfortable. When we think about how Chiron is influencing today, it's challenging us to get out of that comfort zone. In other words, we get too comfortable with our wounding, and we use it to justify all kinds of things. We use it to justify our expectations of others. It informs our interactions with others. And so depending upon how wounded we are, it might really get in the way. And I think that what this is saying here, or suggesting to us, is that we need a different approach with the Page of Swords, that we've just gotten maybe a little too indifferent in our emotions with people, and that we need to maybe not be as self-focused and allow for the possibility of someone else, someone else's viewpoint being relevant, and it's not necessarily something that's against us or trying to hurt us, that people can have their own viewpoints, and that's okay. We don't need to be threatened by them. So that's another aspect of this. How threatened are we? We need a new emotional approach, one that's willing to extend ourselves to others, to put ourselves out there, instead of, sitting back going, oh, and being afraid. It's like, oh, I don't really want to have this interaction because I'm afraid of how it's going to turn out. Sometimes you just have to make yourself emotionally available to others. And then, if they do something that's not so good, well, that's on them. And you don't need to take the wounding that you experienced from that whole thing, from something someone else did, and let that then govern your life for the rest of your life. It's a very difficult lesson that we need to learn, but we all need to learn it. And some of us are better at it than others. I'm not good at it at all. So So this is likely a reading for me. It's like let go of past woundings, let go of what other people are doing, allow them to own it, don't own any part of it. Uh, Adopt the attitude of I don't know what this means, because you really don't, do you? You don't know what someone else's motivation is. You might have a pretty good idea, but you never really know unless they tell you, unless they're truly honest, and how many people are. So, odds are you're never going to know. So you can take all of that on yourself, and become isolated and become, afraid to talk to people and afraid to interact and afraid to maybe, take that emotional risk to resolve issues with someone. It's like, oh, I'm not going to do that because they're not going to resolve it anyway. We've already decided, haven't we, the outcome, right? But with cups, it's telling us let that flow a little bit more. Don't be so rigid. We've got Saturn in Capricorn, avoid rigid thinking. I mean, in a way, we've got the yacht expressed here, don't we? I'm just not so sure which one is the North Node. I don't know if it's the Page of Swords or if it's one of, I would think that the sextiles, the Jupiter and the Moon side would be the Knight of Cups and the Page of Cups. And the Page of Swords might be the North Node of the Moon, where our future is going. So it's almost like we've got the yacht expressed right here. So, anyhow, well, groovy. So I've been putting up the correspondences on the blog. Check those out. Some of it's going to remain the same, the lower stuff, unless I find other stuff to put in. But the upper stuff regarding, where the moon is and the elemental information, that stuff's going to change every day. So do check it out. If you're working magic and you just want to have something you can refer to, if you're trying to shore up, correspondences in your workings, and you just need to find out, okay, what again on Tuesday, what kind of incense can I use? What kind of colors, what kind of, this or that, and where's the moon and where's this and where's that, and what elements are active today, what ones are the strongest, and all that kind of stuff. So all of that matters when you're working magic. And so when you're trying to set your altar up for, whatever working you're doing, if you're going to do it that way, we don't always do it that way, but when we do, we like to know so that we, don't, in other words, if the mansions of the moon are also in there. And so if we need to, shore something up, with maybe one mansion is going to affect what we want to do negatively. So we might have to use a planetary seal or something to help, stave off some of that influence. Whatever you have to do to sort of bring some balance to your working, you can find a lot of that information there. So that'll be there. And that's going to go up every day. So along with some herbal stuff as well. And then, of course, once a week, I'll do the Moon and Rune. That's my new series. So check that out. And then also every month, at the beginning of each month, I do a geomancy reading for the month and also a tarot reading for the month. So check those out as well. And then there's the occasional rant about whatever, and whoever, who that'll be. So it's usually about stuff like that. So anyhow, that you can find that you can find that there as well. You can follow me on Twitter and on LinkedIn and Facebook, and there's a Stepping Aside Facebook page as well. So I don't know. You can find all that in the show more below the video. You can find all those links there. So I guess that's it, and I'll see you tomorrow. Again, we'll find out if he has to go tomorrow morning for jury duty. If he does, then I'll go ahead and do this tonight and get it posted for tomorrow ahead of time. Or I'll probably have to do it tonight because I'll have to be watering in the morning. So still some unknown about this. Otherwise, I guess we will see you tomorrow sometime anyhow. So in any event, be good to yourself, be good to one another. And thank you so much for coming by. Blessed be.